Thank you for listening to Mobility Redefined, brought to you by Modaxo. For more insights and information, please visit mobilityredefined.com. That is mobilityredefined.com. Welcome to the Mobility Redefined podcast, where we explore innovations, strategies, and future trends in urban mobility. I am Dr. Kaan Yildizgoz, and today I am joined by Abimbola Akinajo, Managing Director of LAMATA, Lagos Metropolitan Area Transport Authority. LAMATA has been very instrumental in shaping transport landscape of Lagos, bringing together different modes of transportation and tackling unique challenges faced by one of the largest cities of Africa. Welcome, Abimbola.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kaan. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. It's great to welcome you at this podcast. We were together end of February in Lagos when you were hosting great Nigeria Transport Forum there.
Yes, it was lovely to see you then, and great to see you again.
Thank you, Abimbola, so much. Let's go into our discussion. So it will be great to discuss with you, to get your experience from Lagos and also your perspective that can be easily adapted in multiple cities, particularly in Africa. And I would like to start discussing about LAMATA a little bit at the beginning. Lagos is one of the largest and most popular cities in Africa, and LAMATA plays a key role for managing its transport system. So could you share more about how LAMATA operates and how this governance model helps address these unique challenges in the African context, particularly in urban mobility?
Okay, so thank you very much. So LAMATA, like you say, has responsibility for public transport. We have responsibility to plan it, to franchise it, to implement infrastructure for it, and to regulate it. LAMATA, like you say, was created by law, and that law recognizes those responsibilities for LAMATA. And it is on the back of that LAMATA is able to do the work that it does, in the sense that we are entrenched. We're a city, or shall I say, we're a state mobility organ. And in that system, we are responsible for public transportation. We're responsible for planning all of transportation in Lagos. And that says we have a Lagos State Strategic Transport Master Plan that is under the purview of LAMATA. We plan for all modes of transport, but we implement and regulate only for the road and the rail. The way that it works, the law established LAMATA. There is a way in which the state funds LAMATA to ensure longevity, and this is attested to by the fact that LAMATA has been in existence for over 20 years, and they have grown from strength to strength. And I think the greatest, I would say, position that LAMATA has is the fact that it is entrenched in the state laws, and also all of its financing is ensured to be part of the state's revenue. A certain portion of the state's revenue comes to LAMATA as funding. Those are the things that sort of make LAMATA able to self-sustain. And the ability to self-sustain says that we are able to continue to exist and to do that which we have been formed to do.
I think it's great. You are not just putting a governance framework, but you are also considering how the funding could be sustainable in this framework. And I see a lot of last 10 to 20 years, I see a lot of African cities. They are launching or trying to launch transport authorities for their cities. Yeah. I guess that many of them are taking LAMATA maybe as an example on this road.
Yeah. We would say that LAMATA is probably the second oldest transport authority in Africa. Setud is the first. And a lot of what most new transport authorities are doing is coming to us to see how we do what we do and how we have been managed to being able to sustain oneself for over 20 years in itself is a big feat. But beyond that is to see that we are growing from strength to strength, and we're continuing to deliver on the mandates that the state has given us. Yes, we've had a number of cities come to us, cities within Nigeria, cities outside of Nigeria. We've had Sierra Leone, we've had various other cities, and they've come. And also within Nigeria, we've had various other states come to LAMATA to understand what we do, how we do what we do, so that they can set up their own authorities looking at what has really worked in Lagos.
I think it's a very good point what you were telling. Sometimes I'm receiving a question that, how launching a governance framework could really have an impact on the transport system on the ground. But we are already seeing a lot of improvements in Lagos. And also you gave an example from Situ, which is the Transport Authority of Dakar, Senegal, that we see a lot of improvements after you launch these transport authorities in the cities regarding their transportation.
That's right. I think just being focused and understanding the role that transportation plays in the development of any city is what will drive you. Because transportation is something that speaks to every aspect of a city. It will ensure the economic development, the social well-being, the health, because when we have good transportation, people are not spending too long in traffic, and all of those things will ensure the overall general well-being of the city, yes.
And I guess that no discussion on African urban mobility is complete without touching on what keeps millions moving every day. It's informal transport. So
Yes.
could you share with us about what you are doing in terms of informal transport in Lagos for formalizing, integrating, upgrading? So what are you doing in Lagos from perspective of informal transport?
Okay. So thank you. And I think this is, informal transportation in most of the cities in Africa is there. It exists. What Lagos has seen, and I think it's about us talking about demography of Lagos. Lagos has over 22 million people in Lagos. So I always say pick a number between 20 million and 25 million. That's where the population of Lagos sits. And Lagos is a very small city. So if you look at the whole of Nigeria, we're less than 1% of the landmass, but we house over 10% of the people of Nigeria within Lagos. Lagos is a small city. It is bounded by water. And that means that arranging your public transport is necessary so that you can get rapid movement. Now, when we look at the trips that we make in Lagos, we do over 22 million trips a day. About 40% of that is walking trips. That says that we have circa 12 million mechanized trips in Lagos on a daily basis. Now, from that perspective, how much of that is done by formal transportation and how much of that is done by informal transportation? Today, we would say that over 80% of our transportation is done on road. In fact, over 90% of our transportation is done by road. Now, when we now drill that down, over 75% of that 90% is done by informal transportation. That's a large number. Now, Lagos has seen that, Lagos has recognized that, and we're trying now to bring about a formalization of our public transport system. Lagos is looking at mass transit. We're now in the business of trying to ensure that we have mass public transportation. The strategic transport master plan is the first thing that we've done to identify how we can make that transition from the informal sector, which carries most of our buses, the informal buses, which we call downfalls. They do maybe 12, 13 passengers, anything from 10 to 13, 14 passengers in each bus. Now, we note, and that says that we have over 75,000 of those buses running around Lagos. And that is not taking cognizance of the three-wheelers and the two-wheelers. Now, from where Lagos is sitting, we would like to see a transition from those minibuses to mass transportation. And so therefore, if you look within our strategic transport master plan, we have 6 rail lines, we have about 14 BRT routes, we have about over 20 jetty routes. And the vision here is to ensure that we have an integrated, interconnected, multimodal system. From our perspective, when we go mass, we would then utilize our BRT buses, which will carry nothing less than 70 to 90 to 120, depending on the length of the bus. We want to utilize also high-capacity buses, even in mixed traffic. We will then utilize, obviously, the rail systems that can do anything to 1,000, 1,500 passengers in one trip. So the vision is to go mass transportation. Now, for us to do that, how do we transit from this informal sector to mass transportation? And that is why we are carrying out a study today, the Bus Industry Transition Program, where we're looking at ways in which we can encourage the informal sector to work with government to go down the route of becoming players in the mass transit systems that we're proposing. Now, we have also identified that that there is a hierarchy of buses that Lagos must have. So and we've had a bus reform initiative done where we're looking at the number of how our bus systems will work. So there's the BRT buses, which are sitting in dedicated traffic or dedicated lanes. And then there's the standard route buses, which are high capacity or medium capacity buses, which will be in mixed traffic. And then we have what we call the first and last mile buses, which are the smaller buses, and which is where we see the informal sector playing a larger role. Beyond that, so from that perspective, areas where you can't easily reach or where the utilization of a high capacity bus may be inefficient because of the number of patronage that we're getting from those areas, we will use the first and last mile buses. And what that's doing is taking people from as close to their homes to a bus terminal, a rail station, or a BRT terminal. And in that sense, you will have an integrated system where every journey that you need to make from start to finish can be catered to by a public transport mode or a public transport system. Either it's a first and last mile bus, and then you end up on a BRT bus, or you end up at a rail station, or you end up at a ferry station. All of that we're expecting when they are starting to work together and we have the quantum, i.e. the number of rolling stock that we require, then we will begin to see that transition into mass transportation. And obviously, when we're talking integrated intermodal systems, there's so many things that has to be integrated. We have fare integrations, we have the carry card, which already exists. So all of these modes of transportation can use the same payment method.
I think this transition is not only about, let's say, replacing the vehicles or deploying technology. It has also a lot of impact in terms of the society, in terms of the economics in the city, because you are completely reforming a full industry. So it's very complicated. Sometimes when I discuss with some colleagues, mostly from the Western countries, who are not having informal transport in place, I'm seeing that sometimes that they may not be able to see all the touch points that this transformation is having an impact. It's a very difficult task. I guess maybe it could be the most difficult task for transport executives in the world. I don't know if you will join me. It's more easy. If you have the money, we can put a metro station. We can put buses. But how to make this transformation with the people? Because there are hundreds of people, they are working in informal transport. So how we will make this transition with getting them on board as much as possible?
In fact, you've hit the nail on the head. That really is the most difficult part of it, because there is a people aspect. The informal sector today, if I'm talking about 75 cars on buses, each of those buses probably has about 5 to 6 people working, earning their living from that singular bus. And I'm now trying to bring all of that down to reduction in number of buses. So what I'm looking for is about 15,000 high capacity buses, 6 rail lines, some ferry lines. But what we must understand is that we need to have a good and robust conversation with those who are working in the informal sector today. So mainly the unions, we have ongoing conversations with them. In fact, the program that we're running is a 3-year program. Even though LAMATA as an authority has been speaking to the union for over 10, 15 years, it is an ongoing conversation. It's not something that will happen and you say, well, I've done a study and on this day, this month, everything's going to change. We need to begin to look at what happens to the people. But we also know that in changing, in transiting, there'll be new skills that will be required. There'll be new jobs that will be created from the maintenance aspect, like you say, the creating of major maintenance terminals, major bus terminals. There'll be new requirements for skills. And so it is only necessary as state in those conversations you have with the unions, begin to see how you can take some of them from where they are now and begin to train them in the areas that will be new skills. Because in fairness, they have been working those industries for years. And you don't necessarily have to throw all of them away. You can retool them, or shall I say reskill them, so that they can be useful in the new system. Because the situation must never be that is out with the old and in with the new. It is a meshing, it is a coming together of what used to be and the new order in ensuring that what we now get is a system that works for everybody as much as possible. Now, the one thing that we have learned is that the unions, those who are running the informal sector today, they have a wealth of experience when it comes to public transportation. So it is in the interest of the state in moving to another way of doing things, to acknowledge, to harness, and to utilize. So we acknowledge the skills they have, we harness those skills, and we utilize, and we retrain where we need to. So for us, we as state has recognized that it's not about saying, oh, you must leave, and I'm going to now bring in this new system, and I'm going to bring in new people. But it's about the people who are doing the work now. Some of them will move into high capacity buses. Some of them will move and remain within the first and last mile buses, which means they will still be working on the smaller buses, but they'll be working a very different regime. Their buses will be e-ticketed, they will have tracking systems, they will have different ways in which their contracts are, they will have different skills that they must bring to the table, and we need to ensure that those skills are provided to their people.
So we have seen some failures in the past, and then in these failures, what was the common thing is that the cities were completely trying to replace the informal transport instead of, let's say, looking how they can benefit from them as much as possible and how they can support and integrate them with the current system. So that's a very good approach, Ms. Abimbola. I want to also discuss with you also BRT and rail, because you have a lot of efforts on both of these aspects. And such a city like Lagos, certainly you need to offer a better capacity with BRT or rail system. So where you are now and what are your plans?
Okay, so like I said, our plans are embedded within our master plan. So we have a master plan that's a live document. That master plan has been there for 2003. It's been updated twice. And today it's being updated again. So it's a live document that we keep updating so that it takes cognizance of the growth of the city, where the city is going. So within that master plan, we have 6 metro lines, 1 monorail. We have, to date, at least we have 14 BRT routes. We have a number, we did the BRI, Bus Reform Initiative, out of that as well. And we identified consolidated routes about...
Are they fully dedicated lanes for BRT, or they are using some places mixed traffic?
In some places, most of our BRT in some places have mixed traffic. So from that perspective, we have the master plan that is speaking to what we need. Now, we are now using that master plan to implement the systems that are required. So today, we have 3 of our BRT lines have been implemented. We have 2 rail lines, at least the first phases of 2 rail lines have been implemented. The vision is to continue to roll out because, like I said, the position that we have is that we want to have mass transportation. Mass transit is the best, is a solution that we are headed in the direction of. And that, from our perspective, for a sustainable system, that is what we need. So we now have 2 rail lines. Those rail lines, by the time they're done and fully implemented to capacity, the blue line, for instance, that goes from the east to the west of the city, will have capacity for about 500,000 passengers a day. The red line that goes from the north to the south of the city will have capacity for about 750,000 passengers a day, so long as it's all been implemented and we have adequacy of rolling stock. Now, what this is telling us, for us, it's also the interconnectivity of all these transport systems. So the rail lines are well connected. They're also well connected to BRT routes as well as standard routes. So bus terminals are very close to rail terminals. The ability to have connectivity speaks of a transport system that then functions for the people. Once that exists, the capacity becomes what we now need to continue to grow to ensure that we can cater to the city. Because we've just spoken today, as of today, up until, shall I say about 2013, 2015, it was recognized that we do about 12 million mechanized trips. So with what you are building, we need to ensure that we can keep growing that capacity. So for instance, if I take the Blue Line, today we're doing a train every 18 minutes. In another 3 to 5 months, we will start to do a train every 10 minutes. But the design that we have today will do a train every 3 minutes. And that 3 minutes can be further enhanced to a train every 90 seconds. Now that is how we intend to grow the capacity. So when we're looking at our rail lines, we're expecting growth. When we're looking at our BRT routes, obviously it's about increasing the number of rolling stock we have, begin to look at the possibility of articulated rolling stock for the BRT routes, because if they're dedicated, then yes, we can utilize that. And in standard routes or standard mixed traffic, having nothing less than high capacity routes for the majority of our routes. And obviously we only use the small capacity buses for the first and last mile position. That is a vision that we have. This connectivity is what will drive the mass transit that is the dream and the expectation of the people of Lagos.
I fully agree with you. Sometimes when I am discussing with cities, they are asking me, Kaan, which one is better, either BRT or LRT or metro or regular buses, which one we should invest? I always tell them that it's like asking a question to a technician whether the screwdriver is better or a hammer is better. So you may need them for different problems, to fix different problems in different routes. But the most important thing is, like you say, Abimbola, is the integration. Yeah. Whatever you have at the end, there is need for a trunk road, there is need for feeders to make sure that they work like an orchestra. And I have one question here. How you are planning to fund all these investments?
Okay, so there's a lot of commitment from the state. There's also, we work a lot with the developmental agencies, and they have been, so the first BRT, for instance, was funded by the World Bank. The second half of that was funded between the World Bank and AFD. We're today implementing quality bus corridors, which will be feeders to BRT routes. That's being funded by the AFD. We're also implementing 2 major interchanges. So all of this, we do a lot of work with the developmental agencies. The state also, as a sub-sovereign, is quite committed to implementing, and they themselves are supporting LAMATA. Interestingly, recently, we've had the federal government look at what we're doing, and they've indicated an interest in supporting us with one of our rail lines. And I think for all of what we do, it is a demonstration of the willingness to move forward that says that we get financing partners. We're hoping that in the future, once we begin to speak to a reduction in our carbon emissions, we will also be able to access green funding. So one of the things we're doing is that as LAMATA, we want to be multi-fueled when it comes to our buses. We don't want to be mono-fueled. Today, we're majorly diesel. We want to look at CNG buses. We're expecting a number of CNG buses to be added to the fleet. We are also looking at waste to fuel. So we're looking at the way we can convert our waste into biogas. That particular study has been done between us and the Sweet Fund. And that also will solve 2 environmental matters. It will solve the getting rid of waste, and then it will provide fueling with low emissions for our public transport system. So for us, the ability to be agile in our thinking, the willingness to explore frontiers that will drive us even further into providing public transport, says that we have good relationships with developmental agencies. And let's speak about sustainability from an environmental perspective. If I reduce 75,000 downfalls down to 15,000 high-capacity buses, I have done a great service to the environment of the city of Lagos, because emissions will be hugely reduced. Obviously, there is a scenario where we're also looking at not utilizing diesel buses, but utilizing gas, which will also bring down. And then in some areas also have the mixed fueling. We're talking about gas, and we're talking also about electrification based on affordability.
All these plans are great. I'm looking forward to see that all of them are implemented. And I know that there is one other area in your agenda that you are considering to create as much as more efficiency from all this infrastructure deployed with using technology, and also getting people more on board. So How is LAMATA planning to leverage technology to support its operations and transforming the mobility landscape?
Okay, thank you very much. I mentioned earlier that we have transited into e-ticketing. That we have found hugely useful because it's allowed us to be able to gather data. And it's also allowed us to protect the revenue of our operators. And we have found that to be very successful in Lagos, in the sense that all of the operators have keyed into it, at least the formal operators, and that's working fine. One of the other ways we're looking at, obviously, is to look at having an ITS system that functions for us. The ability to be able to track, the ability to be able to schedule so that I have predictable journeys. The predictability of public transport dictates the willingness of your passengers to come to utilize it. The fact that I know that if I'm at this bus stop, I am certain that in 4 minutes a bus will come, will make it possible for me to stop and wait at that bus stop. As against if I'm waiting, I'm not sure whether it's coming in a minute or it's coming in 30 minutes. So an ITS system that will help us in doing all of that will also drive efficiencies in the areas of operations, looking at how our drivers drive, ensuring that those drivers are driving adequately, efficiently, ensuring that they're not braking too harshly, the way in which they're using the vehicle itself is the best way so as not to cause maintenance issues and all of that. So the ability to gather all of that information, hopefully then be able to train my drivers to ensure that they are doing the best they can at all times. They're efficient and effective in the delivery of service. That we, from an operational perspective, are also efficient and effective in the delivery of service to the people of Lagos. Predictability is a big thing. Reliability is a big thing. Safety is a big thing. All of those things can be monitored when we have an ITS system that looks at all of that put together. So that's one of the things that we in LAMATA are ensuring that we will have as we roll out more rolling stock. Today, we have a tracking system that works for the first and last mile buses that are regulated. We have about 450 buses that we're able to track that way. And we have seen the value that brings, and we're looking to put that value into the high capacity operations that we want to run.
Technology certainly won't replace public transport, but like you say, it will certainly update and upgrade it. So that's how we can be seen. Thank you so much, Abimbola, for sharing these insights into transport governance of Lagos, the integration of informal transport, and your exciting transformation underway in the city. Before we conclude, is there anything else you would like to add, or perhaps like an advice for the other cities in Africa looking to enhance their public transport system?
I think the only thing I'd like to say is that most of us in Africa, we live with this informal sector. And it almost seems as though we live separate lives, almost like never shall the two meet. Regulated transport, informal transport. I think for Africa to begin to experience excellent public transport systems, the two of them must meet. They must meet. So there must be continuous dialogue between government and the informal sector. And the informal sector should also know that things are coming to a point where if they do not come to the table with government, they themselves will find it difficult to create efficiencies in their operations. So the two have things to gain from one another. And until most cities in Africa start to understand that the two coming together is the only way in which our public transport can begin to respond to the huge numbers that we have to move on a daily basis. Then and only then will we begin to see the development in public transport that Africa needs to have.
I certainly agree. And this is like a very good point that can be taken by many other cities. And the informal transport sector in multiple countries, not only even in Africa, also in most of the, let's say, Southern Hemisphere, that's in Latin America, in Southeast Asia. That's a very good advice. But what can I say is that the road doesn't choose a traveler, but the traveler chooses the road. But with the LAMATA, it's very obvious the path ahead is very well paved. So it has been a pleasure having you on the podcast, Abimbola. Thank you for joining us. And thanks to our listeners for tuning into this episode of Mobility Redefined. Stay tuned for more conversations with transport leaders shaping the future of mobility.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kaan.
Thank you for listening to Mobility Redefined, brought to you by Modaxo. For more insights, visit our website at mobilityredefined.com or follow us on LinkedIn. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast on your favorite app to stay updated with our latest episodes. Thank you for tuning in, and we hope you enjoyed the conversation.